The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's relation.
The New World Order.
I'm an American. I have rights.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the podcast today. It is Friday. Happy Friday. Got a lot of news to cover here. A little less than 30 articles. We got about, 28 stories to get through. So what we're going to be covering today is obviously the false start on the Jeffrey Epstein release. Those files are being hidden, it seems like, by rogue elements of the FBI. And also we have some other news on the vaccine front. RFK Jr. apparently has cut nearly $500 million in vaccine subsidies, particularly for the COVID vaccine. So let's get into this news and more coming up right now. We're going to start off with this story here from the Post-Millennial. RFK Jr. halts $460 million Biden-era COVID-19 vaccine contract. Kennedy and health officials will review early study findings over the next 90 days before deciding on further action. So they could re-implement some of this funding. But what is becoming clear now from DOJ and new department heads revealing things going on by the Biden administration, the whole 4 years, but particularly in his lame duck period, it was just a spigot wide open of spending. Anything that would warrant the spending became spending. And we see it here with $500 million subsidy, really, for vaccines that weren't really needed. Do some people still get the vaccine? Sure, but at this point, I don't think it should be subsidized by the federal government. A connected story here from Zero Hedge, what we know about African mystery illnesses that have sickened over 400 people and can kill within hours. Zero Hedge says something sinister is lurking in the heart of Africa and no one knows what it is. A mysterious illness has crept through 2 remote villages in northwest Congo, killing 53 people in just 5 weeks, some within hours of falling sick. And timing is everything and is suspect, certainly in this case. The outbreaks began on January 21st. What does that tell you? That tells you that the day after Donald Trump was sworn in, inaugurated, that sicknesses began in the Congo. So we know they're planning to take something off the shelf. And probably another pandemic, certainly in Trump's term. How that all pans out is left to be seen. We got other news coming up as well from the Washington Times, and this has to do with the bill that people are dealing with right now. So if you didn't know what was happening in, in legislation circles, the Washington Times is reporting Republicans coalesce around a stopgap funding bill as negotiations stall over Democratic demands. So the Democrats are the obstructionists now. And what we see is that the Republicans are going to play ball. So instead of shutting down the government, they're going to agree not in a full budget, which has been the problem for 5 years, is instead of passing a budget, they pass stopgap funding measures, which is not a full budget. Now, the reason they can't agree is because the Democrats are holding the budget bill hostage, in a sense, demanding that Trump relinquish some of his power as the executive so we could push through the budget bill. The Democrats are denying the American public the right to legislate over their displeasure with Donald Trump being elected. Instead of working with the other party and the president, the Democrats have concluded that they are going to subvert any action by the Republicans, MAGA, and Donald Trump, obviously. More news from the Associated Press. Economic blackout. Will a 24-hour boycott make a difference? What do we see with this article is that a grassroots organization is encouraging U.S. residents not to spend money on Friday, that's today, as part of an economic resistance. The People's Union USA calls the 24-hour spending abstinence set to start at midnight an economic blackout, a term that has been shared and debated on social media. The activist movement said it also has plans to promote week-long consumer boycotts of particular companies, including Walmart and Amazon. The latter part, I don't have a problem with. I boycott Walmart all the time. I never shop at Walmart because the Waltons don't run an ethical business. And most of the crap they buy is from China. Amazon, unfortunately, is the plethora of goods and the shipping infrastructure of Amazon is hard to beat. So if you want something really quickly, I abstain from using Amazon for a long time, but you can go onto Amazon and you could get it the next day, sometimes for free shipping. That's unheard of. Nobody could really match that level of service. So it's hard to avoid Amazon. In any case, let's get back to the economic blackout. Is an economic blackout a good thing? If you're trying to hurt the U.S. economy, how would you do that? Unfortunately, businesses you might not like are part of the overall economy. I have no problems with boycotts whatsoever. If they're targeted, it's just like a tariff. But if you're trying to undermine the economy as a whole, consumer spending is a big part of it. And I don't think that I don't think you should undertake something without understanding the full extent. What we're trying to do is get the economy going because Biden killed it. Even after COVID, Trump had really been successful in restarting the economy, and to some measure the economy was even stronger than before COVID. So that's hard to parse out because of the fact that the economy went to basically zero. And so the amount of improvement isn't a fair assessment. All right, let's get to the Epstein files. So NBC is reporting hyped release of Epstein files sparks anger and disappointment on the right. The Jeffrey Epstein case has long been an obsession of those who are convinced that the names of prominent figures involved in sex trafficking network have been kept secret. Now, I hate to disappoint NBC News, but what we need to understand is there is no way that all these things transpired without some greater conspiracy. So the devil is certainly in the details. Jeffrey Epstein became rich overnight for no apparent reason. They call him a financial or an investor or financial analyst. He had little to do with finances. He was given hundreds of $millions by a certain individual, which he then used to expand his sex trafficking empire. Now, we don't know the full extent. What we do know from victims where that he hired young teenage girls to massage, provide sexual favor for friends and Jeffrey Epstein himself. I think that's the tip of the iceberg. I think what you're seeing here is a classic limited hangout. And what we saw yesterday was certainly a limited hangout, re-releasing information that had already been released, some of it re-redacted, when we know that perfectly clear that the flight logs and Rolodex information is not the extent of the investigation. All right, the guy's dead. The victims want the information out. The public wants the information out. The information was seized, most of it by the FBI, which operates with taxpayer dollars, seized from Jeffrey Epstein's residences, including videotapes and child pornography, etc. I talked about this the other day. You don't have to show us the child pornography, but we need an index, an accounting of everything that was seized and how it may or may not pertain to a greater investigation. Because what's on trial here isn't necessarily Jeffrey Epstein because he's conveniently dead. And now I hate to admit this to people, but I don't think he's dead. Everything points to the fact that his death was faked and that he was moved out of the facility and is probably living, in Costa Rica somewhere, or Belize, Paraguay, wherever. Grew his hair out, grew a beard, wears sunglasses. No one will ever know. That's the reality. So what is being investigated, and whether or not the Trump administration is really up to the task of unleashing what appears to be something so grandiose that it would take years to unwind. Wall Street Journal is reporting inside Kash Patel's whirlwind start at the FBI. New FBI director ordered officials to undertake a $100 million restructuring with no clear way to pay for it, and took on a second job, and they're referring to the ATF. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. It should be good it should be received well by gun owners or gun dealers. Hard to say. We know full well at this point that guns aren't the things that are responsible for the mass shootings and violence in general. What we do know is that there's something else behind that also has to be uncovered by the FBI. Kash Patel is way beyond his depth. What he thought might have been going on at the FBI is just scratching the surface, in my humble opinion. The Post-Millennial is reporting Kash Patel vows to swiftly pursue those who undermine FBI after AG Pam Bondi reveals FBI New York office withheld Epstein documents. There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, no stone left unturned, and anyone from the prior or current bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. That's a strongly worded memo, for sure. But what we're not sure is what exactly Cash is going to do. Cash is beyond his depth. I think Pam Bondi is as well. I think they're weighing into a morass that is so deep and dirty, muddy, swampy, sticky situations that are so numerous that it boggles the mind, that it would take years to unwind. We'll see what happens. All righty. We're going to move on in just a second. I have to rearrange something. Is that it? No. That was, there it is. So we're going to get to this article later, but apparently another insurance CEO was targeted with a attempted murder. But let's stay with the Bondi case. One American News is reporting Bondi demands to see all Epstein-related intelligence, accuses FBI of withholding docs. You figure? She said, late yesterday, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. We know this. We have drone footage of the FBI on Little St. James, that's Epstein's island, removing box after box after box of computer hardware, hard drives, files, apparently CD after CD or DVD after DVD, purportedly containing video of child sex abuse. Who knows if that was ever indexed or detailed in any way in the report? We don't know. We don't know shit. It's the same thing that happened after Sandy Hook. I read the FBI report, the shit that wasn't redacted, and most of the redacted stuff shouldn't have been redacted. It's the same thing. We don't know. Oh, the case against Epstein is over because he's dead. How convenient. So it never gets to be made public. And that's the point with a lot of the shit that I talk about when you have a mass shooter and then he kills himself at the end. How convenient is that? Because now we don't have to have a trial, which is public. The Federalist is reporting Trump DOJ, the FBI is withholding thousands of pages of Epstein files. Pam Bondi contended that the source informed her that an FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. And despite her repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. Bondi went on to say that Patel was just as surprised as she was to learn this new information. Real Clear Politics' Phil Wegman reported to this seemingly to be the case in Thursday tweet. The White House reporter quoted an unnamed DOJ source who allegedly said that Bondi and Patel are 100% on the same page. In her letter to Patel, Bondi noted that the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to her office on Friday morning, regardless how such information was obtained, legally or illegally. I mean, and that's the long and the short of it, is there is thousands of documents that were seized in the investigation of Epstein. Now, some of the property was returned. more than likely. Some of it wasn't. And the files that they they obtained and have kept all have to be released. We know that there should at least be an accounting. First of all, Pam, we want an accounting of all the evidence before you release it. Number of pages, where they were seized, number of other material, DVDs, computer hard drives. We need an accounting of that first. Then, bit by bit, you could disclose what's in them. You don't even have to show the actual documents. So there are 3 phases. First, we need to know an accounting of all the evidence that the FBI or the federal government has obtained, what it is, and then later what's in it. Next headline from Post Millennial: Indiana man arrested after online threats to gut Elon Musk plant bomb in his house. I am going to plant a bomb in Elon Musk's house. So he's arrested, and apparently this came from a Texas investigation. So apparently, in Elon Musk in Austin, Texas, notified the Austin, Texas police or the state police that he had a threat to his life. That, I don't know, I guess it was posted on X. So he notified the police, and the police investigated who it was, and they found out it was an Indiana man, and then they contacted Indiana police, who then arrested this individual. I thought I had the text for that. All right, moving on. The Federalist: Patel's FBI could shine light on Nashville trans school shooters manifesto. Good. There is so much that an honest FBI could tell the American people about what the fuck is going on. Okay, they're supposed to be investigating crime, that's fine. But there is an underlying thread of trans violence that has to be investigated, and the puzzle pieces need to be put together so we can get the big picture. But also the FBI has been involved in nefarious illegal activity. And that has to be exposed. Kash Patel, if you're listening, I would start with the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center, because that has been the FBI operation that has been most unraveled, and we need to know the truth behind that. So that's 93, and then we can move to 95, the Oklahoma City bombing, and then we could move to, was it Randy Weaver that was next? It's hard to say. That whole era, there's an era there that has to be exposed. So whether it's Waco and the FBI's involvement in Waco, or Ruby Ridge, but also, what the hell was that ex-cop's name that went on a shooting rampage and he was burned to death by the FBI in his cabin? So we need to know about that. We need to know about the FBI's online infiltration of troubled young people and their dubious conversations that lead to violent behavior. So the FBI blocked the release of a Nashville elementary school shooters manifesto in the name of identity politics. All this information should be disclosed. the American people need to have a wake-up call, and that wake-up call is going to be in the vein of exposing what the government has been doing. Certainly not in the people's name. The New York Post reports Biden aide admits administration was gaslighting Americans by covering up alarm at his age and health. Michael LaRosa, former White House aide and longtime press secretary for First Lady Jill Biden, admitted that the campaign was aware from day one that the 81-year-old's age was an issue, and that aides were scared to death of letting him do off-the-cuff interviews ahead of the election. Well, my first question there is, which campaign? The 2024 campaign or the 2020 campaign? I'm led to believe the 2020 campaign, because it seems like he was already in cognitive decline and that people knew this way ahead of his so-called election. And LaRosa goes on to say, cover up to me is a little hard, a little harsh. Every politician, everybody, every human being tries to cover up age. Why? We were always from day one cognizant that his age was an issue. So he's trying to make it, oh, it's not a big deal. We're just lying to the American public. Everybody does it. Another Federalist article, propaganda press upset Trump could shut down CISA's election censorship. Well, what is this? This is Jeopardy. No. This is the Trump administration has launched a review of every cybersecurity and infrastructure agency, CISA, role related to election security and so-called misinformation and disinformation after CISA began censoring speech. CISA, originally established in 2018 to address cybersecurity threats, quickly transformed into a government-run censorship operation, particularly during the 2020 election. So if you know who Chris Krebs is, I don't even know if he's with CISA anymore. He should be fired if he is. He led the propaganda campaign that turned into the Biden administration's attempt at trying to create a bureau of misinformation, a censorship bureau. Because Chris Krebs constantly said, oh, there are people that are trying to misinform or disinform the American public. That wasn't really the case. The Russian disinformation, misinformation, propaganda operations were not so sophisticated and not that extensive. Anything that benefits the Russian point of view could be seen as propaganda. But my problem is with ending the war in Ukraine is we're not looking at the whole picture. So people say, oh, you're a Russophile. I'm not a Russophile. You just have to, if you're not taking in Russia's security concerns, you're not addressing the issue of the war, which is the NATO creep eastward that has bothered the Russians so much. They didn't just invade Ukraine for no reason. So it seems like people on the left, or people in general, they don't want to know the cause or motivation of anything. They just, in their subjective manner, thinking up reasons that, close out the truth. Vote beats Jessica Husband wrote, the Trump administration has begun to overhaul CISA in a way that has election officials across the country worried that U.S. elections will not be as robustly monitored and secured as they were in 2024. The process started with divisions concerned with an election security and misinformation. CISA is not on your side. The idea of CISA, I think, is a good thing. But CISA, as it stands now, Chris Krebs, are more concerned with protecting the deep state and the way the deep state operates, particularly how the Democrats operate. And the Democrats, the reason they're Democrats is they like the democratic process, the ballot, because it can get rigged. And part of the rigging is misinformation, disinformation, and pointing, while you're rigging the election, point to other actors that should be investigated or be considered responsible. That's classic misdirection. Oh, yes, we agree. Yes, the elections, that we need to make sure the elections are secure. Russia is the biggest culprit. It's when it's really the Democrats. Oh, you're worried about election security, falsified ballots, bloated voter rolls. That's what you have to look at first. Illegal ballots. Nobody was hacking into election computers, as far as we know. Just the News is reporting China vows to retaliate if Trump increases tariffs next week. If the U.S. insists on its own way, China will take all the necessary countermeasures to defend its legitimate rights and interests, said the Chinese. We urge the U.S. side not to repeat its own mistakes and to return as soon as possible to the right track of properly resolving conflicts through dialogue on equal footing. I have a lot of problem with these statements because they're replete with tells. And what a tell is things like not to repeat its own mistakes, which may or may not have been mistakes, but they're labeling them mistakes, characterizing U.S. actions as mistakes, and return to, as soon as possible, to the right track of properly resolving conflicts through dialogue on equal footing. Well, the footing isn't equal because America has the most robust economy. Right track is a misnomer because it might not be the right track. It might be the wrong track as far as United States interests are concerned. Getting back to another foreign affairs story, we have Reuters reporting that Trump wants to deport some foreign students. These activists want to help. So Trump signed executive order in January targeting foreigners who espoused hateful ideology and anti-Semitism, specifically international students involved in the university pro-Palestinian protests. Well, first of all, yesterday I mentioned that what we're dealing with here is the fact that, witting or unwitting, a lot of these Palestinian or Arab students are influence controlled by folks back home. Their parents, their imam via their parents or their friends, their neighbors, their government, not always terrorist groups, maybe other groups, secular or non-militant groups associated with these terrorist groups. So, or they could be witting spies or agitators, activists that go around rousing the student population into protest. So if they're ejected, that's fine. We can't forget that being an legal immigrant here for student visa or whatever is not the same as being a citizen. So do they get the same rights under the Constitution? Apparently, to free speech. But I think the free speech of a citizen should certainly be more robust than that of a foreign national. So they're free to speak, but if they're involved in anything further than that, in the inflammatory rhetoric or calls to violence or what have you, might not be as tolerated. Certainly, any intimidation or threatening of students on campus that are American citizens by people who are not American citizens should be looked at as a crime, or at least criminally investigated. The Reuters article goes on for activist groups ranging from Mothers Against College Anti-Semitism and the Chicago Jewish Alliance to the U.S. wings of the Zionist organization Betar and the Syrian Collective Surveillance Networks. The orders provided that they said was a long-awaited tool to help squash anti-Semitism on college campuses. This goes for Israelis also, what I just mentioned. If they are foreign nationals, they don't get to, their words don't have as much weight as an American citizen. Just the way I look at it. You have the right to free speech, but I think the limit should come sooner than that of a citizen. Right, the New York Times is reporting Trump administration updates. Judge says memos directing mass firings of federal workers are illegal. I disagree. These are probationary employees. So there's a reason people are probationary employees, because we could fire you easier. So the fact that the judge says you can't fire people, he's the commander-in-chief. So he is the chief executive. So the chief executive can fire anybody without cause. Consider it a layoff. I don't. The ruling by Judge William Alsup of the North District of California stopped short of ordering a halt in the firings and added to the confusion for federal employees who have been rattled by the mass firings in recent days. Judge Alsup found that the government's Human Resources Division had exceeded its authority when it issued a pair of memos outlining steps to fire an estimated 200,000 probationary workers. So it had exceeded its authority when it issued a pair of memos outlining steps to fire. So it's a problem with the process. So the judge says you didn't do it right. It's not that you can't do it. He said it exceeded its authority in the process. It didn't say that the Human Resources Division didn't have the right to fire employees or to lay off employees. It just said it exceeded its authority the way it did it. So he found some little loophole, a little process error that allows him to make that decision. Because he was thinking it's looking for the crime. How can we stop him from doing it? That's when you have an activist judge, or certainly activists arguing the case. We have to stop him, find something, do something. So he goes through the way it was done and go, oh, you didn't quite do it correctly. I don't know if that ruling is going to stand. It's certainly going to be appealed. What American News is reporting, Trump administration orders federal agencies to submit reorganization plans, brace for mass firings, good. Fire them all, I say. It's the people that rely on the federal government who are like, wait a second. I can't imagine a federal employee. How does a federal employee help me? Fox News is reporting why Zelensky keeps pushing for Ukraine NATO ship. Excuse me. Why Zelensky keeps pushing for Ukraine NATO membership, even though Trump says it is not happening. I want to find NATO a path or something similar. Volodymyr Zelensky is a puppet of the global deep state, however you want to define that, not necessarily of the United States, certainly not of the Trump administration. He is a puppet. And so the puppet masters want Ukraine to join NATO. Zelensky could care less. Is Zelensky's a puppet. He doesn't care about the people of Ukraine. They made him out to be some sort of nationalist fighting for Ukraine. He's a puppet that is trying to fulfill his mission, which was to get Ukraine to be part of NATO through this war of attrition with Russia. Trump was right to exclude him from peace deals. The text goes on to say Zelensky isn't backing down from seeking NATO membership. Or Ukraine, despite the fact that President Donald Trump has said to the Ukrainian leader could forget about joining the military alliance. If we don't get security guarantees, we won't have a ceasefire. Nothing will work. Nothing. So he's trying to blackmail or deal with Trump in a way that, Trump is the deal maker, not Zelensky. And you saw what Trump did with Maduro. He's like, what? You're trying to hard-nose me? Fuck you. I hold all the cards. Which is true. So if you hold all the cards, then certainly you can go ahead and call the shots. Just the News is reporting FAA to raise salary of candidates for air traffic controller positions amid staff shortage. So apparently what happened here is the FAA rejected almost 2,000 white male applicants because they wanted to fulfill their DEI quota. Well, right now, and apparently Doge and Musk and Trump are trying to get those original applicants back. Hey, we need you. But, people have moved on and they've gotten other jobs, and the FAA, especially air traffic controllers, very stressful job. They should be paid more. And DEI, I think things should be merit-based. I was never against affirmative action. I'm not saying that you can't diversify your workplace. I think you can. But you don't make a mentally handicapped dwarf your CEO. I mean, you have to take the best and put them in positions where they're going to, it's like the Pareto principle. You have to take the most, I wouldn't want to say the most intelligent. You have to take the best equipped individual and put them in a place where they're going to make the most difference. Whatever skin color or sex they are, doesn't really matter. The Advocate is reporting. Now, The Advocate is a LGBTQ magazine, newspaper. The Department of Homeland Security quietly eliminates ban on surveillance based on sexual orientation and gender identity. The Department of Homeland Security has eliminated policies preventing the investigation of individuals or groups solely based on their sexual orientation or gender identity. The DHS Office of Intelligence and Analysis quietly updated its policy manual earlier this month, as first reported by Bloomberg, removing LGBTQ plus identities from general requirements section that prohibit surveillance based solely on mutable characteristics. Now, if you think you're born gay, fine. I'm not going to argue that here. But what makes you homosexual is your behavior. You say you were born gay, okay, but that's not what makes you gay. What makes you gay or homosexual is having sex with the same sex. So until it can be medically proven that people are born gay, and I think there are a bunch of biological and environmental contributors, how genetically inherent they may be, I don't know. But in any case, it's not a mutable characteristic. It's not like you're black. You can't stop being black, but you certainly could stop dating and having sexual intercourse with the same sex, because that's what makes you gay. I mean, really, the larger issue is debatable. I don't want to get into it here, but it's not, I wouldn't consider it immutable, but obviously gay people do. The manual now states OSCIC personnel are prohibited from engaging in intelligence activities based solely on an individual's or group's race, ethnicity, sex, religion, country of birth, nationality, or disability. The use of these characteristics is permitted only in combination with other information. So what they're saying is you can't just surveil somebody or start an investigation based on these immutable characteristics. It's got to be their behavior. Obviously, that's why I made that statement earlier. Is homosexuality a basis for surveillance? Absolutely not. Criminality, or the suspected criminality, is the reason for fucking surveillance. Espionage is criminal. So this is my problem with the fucking security services to begin with. You can't surveil or start an investigation into somebody who didn't do anything wrong and that you don't have any reasonable evidence to think otherwise. That's exactly what happened with Donald Trump. He was investigated and surveilled to find something that they could use. And then they pursued that avenue. Not only that, but through warfare, et cetera, et cetera. I don't want, everybody knows that by now. All right, let's change the subject. Newsweek. Florida Republicans welcoming Andrew Tate sparks fury. It's disgusting. Florida Republican group has been condemned for inviting Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan to speak with them while the pair were await trial for human trafficking offenses in Romania. And Romania's got a bunch of other things going on right now, which is disgusting as well. The Tampa Bay young Republicans shared the invitation on social media Thursday as the two brothers invited the two brothers arrived in Florida after Romanian prosecutors lifted a 2-year travel ban. Andrew and Tristan Tate deny all charges against them. Newsweek has contacted the Tampa Bay young Republicans, a spokesperson for Andrew Tate, for comment via emails. The young Republicans' embrace of the Tate brothers has faced backlash from GOP figures and groups that have long spoken out against the so-called cancel culture and deplatforming. But what we have to understand is that Andrew and Tristan Tate, who have millions of predominantly young male followers online, are accused of being involved in a criminal gang that lured women to Romania to be sexually exploited. Andrew Tate also faces additional charge of rape. Okay, which is from his girlfriend or a woman he was intimate with. Okay, so let's start with Romania. Romania is a key player in NATO and has been infiltrated by intelligence groups and is used by intelligence groups for a variety of different things. Recently, the most popular electoral candidate for president was elected president, and then they canceled the election and disbanded his presidency, and now they arrested him. What is that? That's not democracy. So much for spreading democracy. Okay, moving on to the Tate brothers. So the Tate brothers were targeted by MI6, MI5 really, for becoming popular online personnel. So they were accused, or Andrew Tate was accused of some sexual crime. So he fled to Romania, and they started a OnlyFans business where they would tape young females committing sexual acts, and they would share the profits of their OnlyFans page with the women. That's it. It's not sexual trafficking. It's not rape. None of that was, as I mentioned earlier, the woman accusing Andrew Tate of rape originally said that he didn't do anything wrong to her or any of the women, and then she changed her tune. You know, this is all an intelligence op. So Republicans shouldn't be mad. If you're mad, then you need to get down to the nitty-gritty, the detailed information of the case, and realize what it's all about. And certainly, if the intelligence operations are the intelligence community, I should say, are involved in a counterculture transhuman propaganda operation, a psychological operation, if they are indeed engaged in that, this would make perfect sense, because Andrew Tate is the adversary, or takes the adversarial position to the transgender cult. So that's why they're targeting Andrew Tate, because Andrew Tate is the opposite of transgenderism. And all the propaganda and psychological operations that are going around, particularly in the West, but America. And there's a whole agenda behind it. It's not just, understand this, that all these videos that I'm making, the bad words I say, or my adversarial opinion to transgenderism, are all going to become crimes in the future, and I'll probably be locked up for them, because that's what's happening in Europe. So that's the thing, is making something unreal real, and then condemning anybody who doesn't buy the gaslighting, condemning them and arresting them and bringing them up on criminal charges. That's what all the allies and the trans violence, that's what it's all about. Not us. We're the victims. It's them. Just the News is reporting proposed firearm legislation in Colorado considered massive infringement by gun advocates. It's been rewritten, but the most egregious was the Senate Bill 25003, concerning many pro-firearm advocacy groups it originally banned the sale or purchase of any semi-automatic rifles, shotguns, or gas-operated handguns, which are all semi-automatics, that take detachable magazines. All. So it's very similar to what they did in in Canada, where they outlawed everything except for revolvers. Following the amendment process, it would still ban the purchase or sale of the applicable semi-automatic weapons, but now creates exemptions for individuals who complete a firearm safety course and are vetted by law enforcement, which is basically what we have here in Connecticut. Is that there are two different levels. There's a different level for rifles and a different level for handguns. And so to purchase a handgun, you need to get a pistol permit, but that pistol permit also lets you conceal carry. But it's only for 5 years and then you have to re-up. But it's these kind of amendments that you have the right to keep and bear arms of whatever the technology is of the day. That's it. So you're allowed to keep, have in your house, and also to bear, which means to hold, so can carry, for your protection. Colorado, it used to be a conservative state. I don't know what the fuck. Too many people in Aspen. Couple more minutes here. The post-millennial hooded gunman opens fire at state accident insurance fund CEO in Oregon. The suspect left the scene on foot, police believe, has not yet been apprehended. So the story here is State Accident Insurance Fund CEO Chip Tehune this doesn't make sense. They need to edit. I can't stand if you're publishing something and you have spelling errors or syntax errors or whatever in the lead. The lead is the most important part. Some people never read past the lead. So, State Accident Insurance Fund CEO Chip Terhune was shot at by a hooded gunman who opened fire on him near his Lake Oswego, Oregon home. The suspect wore all dark clothes with a possible hoodie or ski mask while carrying a light-colored object, the police said. The suspect left the scene on foot, police believe, and has not yet been apprehended. Windows and doors at the Terhune home were shattered in the gunfire. The shooting took place around 4 a.m. on the morning of February 21st. Terhune said that he believed at first that someone had been throwing rocks at his home, but then he discovered they were gunshots. An investigation is underway. All right, last article here. Iowa gives final approval to a bill, or second to last. Iowa gives final approval to a bill removing gender identity protections despite protests. So this is the same thing that's going on with the intelligence community. The bill would remove gender identity as a protected class from the state civil rights law and explicitly define female and male as well as gender, which would be considered a synonym for sex and not be considered a synonym or shorthand expression for gender identity, experience, gender expression, or gender role, which is the problem. First of all, you don't get a special carve-out protected class if you're a gender bender. You get the same rights as everybody else. But gender expression is not an immutable characteristic. Whether it should be protected? I mean, I guess if you're attacked specifically because you are something, I guess that should be a federal crime. I guess. I don't know. What tires me is just that that people will say, I'm this, I deserve special treatment. That doesn't work. That never worked for me, even for the elite, who that when a Karen would say, you know who I am? I don't care who you are. You get the same rights and respect as everybody on the planet. No more, no less. I would talk to Donald Trump the same way I talk to a homeless person. I don't, the line is drawn usually when somebody disrespects me, and then you get the full brunt. All right, thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Have a great Friday, and have a great weekend. I'll see you next week. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically. Stay hip to the trick. Check me out on social media. X, Facebook, Getter, Mindstrue Social. Check out my other website, libpop.org. Learn about libertarian populism. Check the link in the description for Liberty merch. Merchandise, sweatshirts, t-shirts, hats, hoodies from the Alex Jones store. If you go through my link, I get a couple bucks because I don't really make money doing this, so it has become a bit of a vanity project. Okay, thanks for joining me today. See you next week. Respect.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
I'm an American. I have rights.
The New World Order.
This is all a conspiracy. No, you know that it's a conspiracy there.